I'm going to call to order the March 25th, 2024 school committee meeting. This meeting is being held in person and or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. We have Harbor Media recording, and we are recording tonight on Zoom for purposes of minutes. Is there anyone in the audience or online recording? If the people online could raise your hand, or in the audience. Including some of the parents that might want to take videos. Okay, all right. So we have some parents in the audience who are going to either photograph or videotape their adorable children as they present in a few minutes, and we are very excited to see them. All right, so before we get there, we have one item of business to do, and that's the approval of minutes. So I will,
Make it quick. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the salary negotiation subcommittee with participation of the full school committee held on February 28th, 2024.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes of the salary and negotiation subcommittee with participation of the full school committee meeting held March 4th, 2024.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Motion to approve minutes of the school committee meeting held on March 12th, 2024.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And motion to approve the minutes of the salary negotiation subcommittee with participation of the school committee meeting held on March 13th.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. All right. So now is the fun part. Item 3, school showcase. We have East Elementary School tonight. So I will let Jonathan come up and introduce his school and students.
Stand right behind me. You guys can come right up. Awesome. All right, thank you. East is rolling deep tonight. We've got a bunch of kids with me. We are here to highlight the East Elementary Newspaper Club, a really exciting initiative that was the idea of 2 of our 4th grade students last year that developed into a school-wide club, and I can't wait to showcase that for us. Yeah, I will. Thank you. That worked. Thank you, Aisha. So last year, a few of our 4th grade students, those 2 students are actually here with me tonight, Sophia Roberts and Tula Levin, had the idea to start a 4th grade newspaper. So amongst themselves, they wrote about articles of interest, topics of interest. They compiled those articles into a 4th grade newspaper and shared that first amongst the 4th grade classrooms and then throughout the entire school. We were so excited to sort of highlight that last year. And they said to themselves and then to me, could we take what we did with our newspaper club in 4th grade and make that a club for the whole school? I was delighted by the idea. I said, absolutely, we'll make it happen. And from there, the East Elementary Newspaper Club really took shape. We met with Tula and Sophia in the summertime to talk about how they wanted to develop ideas, who they wanted the participants to be, what space would we use in school, sort of walking them through the process and hopeful that they were maintaining their excitement about it throughout. Once we opened this year, we met a couple of more times in the office and went over everything from what type of materials they would need, again, what space, who would be supervising the club, made sure everything was in order, and they handled the sign-up process as well through the main office. The club ran from this past October, until March. Our actual last meeting of the year will be this Wednesday. We produced 4 school-wide newspapers with content written, edited, and published by the students at East Elementary School. The participants, and many of them are here representing grades 1 through 5, were participants in the newspaper club. We met almost every single Wednesday. The only days that we didn't meet were half days. The students themselves wrote the articles. They were assigned some topics. We would have a prep meeting for each of our editions, and we all sort of talked about what elements of a newspaper should be represented, what types of things would kids want to read about, and they all basically took it from there. Our 2 editors from grade 5 also helped to compile all of the articles into the newspaper format itself. Each of our issues included themed content, interviews with the staff across the school, some fun and interesting would you rathers. So we were, as with our winter theme, would you rather ski or snowboard? Or as we were entering Halloween, are you a gummy and fruit person, or are you a chocolate type of person? There are only sort of 2 people in this world. And then some opinion writing. So this is a bit of the 4th grade newspaper from last year. As you can see, one of our students wrote about the composting initiative that we had in our schools. The other topics of the articles were about spring sports, really a sort of potpourri of things. When we came together this year, it was voted upon by the students. They chose the name of the school newspaper, the East Cool School Times. Once again, written, edited, and supported by the East Elementary School students. So as I talked about, every Wednesday we would take over the library. The cool part about the club was some students stayed and wrote a couple of articles for us and then peeled off, kind of wasn't their thing, or time commitment wasn't able to be kept up. Some of our other students, especially the guys that are here with us tonight, they were contributors to every single session, every single edition, and they even wrote perhaps more than we could even put into the newspapers themselves. Some articles did go unpublished, but we certainly have some prolific writers. One of the things that I loved, it's easy to see in this picture, was not only are we truly taking over the whole library, but we had our older students working with our younger students. And that was something that we didn't really talk about. It's something that Sophia and Tula just sort of gravitated towards on their own. As we had, as you can imagine with our 1st grade writers, they have a lot of ideas in their head, but putting those down onto paper into a fully fleshed out article was no easy task. And if it was ended up in the result of a composed article, it was due to the efforts of Tula and Sophia themselves, pulling up chairs next to them, helping them with the research, helping them with the typing themselves, or even facilitating the process of interview questions for staff in the school. Our newspaper club were able to interview the music teacher at East Elementary. They were able to interview our head custodian, Mr. Rich, our cafeteria workers. It was really great. Here's the 2 cover pages of Mr. Moy and Mr. Rich made it onto the cover of our East Cool School Times. There's some samples. Again, the really great part about it was we came up with a theme. We talked about, okay, so all of the articles in this one can be about X, and the students just sort of like took it from there. Again, s'mores or hot cocoa, which person are you? Are you a snowboarder or a skier? The most recent and final article, final edition of the newspaper, they got to write about just whatever they wanted, anything that interests them. We had one of our students who's not here with us tonight, did not only their opinion piece was cats versus dogs, they surveyed by putting in the staff's mailboxes for each classroom, all of this, either students or teachers themselves. They compiled that survey data. They gave us some graphs and some statistics on that, a real again, statistical analysis. For the record, East is very much a heavily skewed dog school. More winter content was writing. Our friend Emmett here, your article about snowshoe hares has been highlighted. And also our friend Abe, who's up here, contributed to what happens on snow days. They talk a little bit about the things that they like to do. They get in their gear. Tradition at East Elementary is to have everyone wear their boots and snow pants. If there's snow on the ground, we do not restrict access to the playground. In fact, we encourage it. They go out, they play in that snow as long as everyone's sort of geared up. So it has been a real great club experience. We are definitely thankful for their efforts. We've loved to see the things that they're writing about, and it's been really great to just sort of watch this process from an idea of, hey, Mr. Haas, do you think we can come up with a newspaper club to something that was actually a newspaper club, kept kids engaged and entertained, saw some wonderful writing from our students, and it was a great place to sort of hang out every Wednesday. So I'm definitely thankful to our participants, and I know they wanted to talk a little bit about their experience.
Hi, I'm Sophia Roberts.
And I'm 211. We are currently in 5th grade at East.
Together in the 4th grade, we had an idea to create a newspaper for our grade.
Thanks to the support of our teacher and Mr. Haas, this is now a school-wide newspaper with an after-school club of over 15 students.
In the school newspaper, there's information about school-wide events and other kids' hobbies and interests.
Our goal is to have another way to bring our school together and share each other's interests.
Thanks, guys. Nice work. Nice work. That's okay. I told them they did not have to talk, that I would do most of the talking for them, but I'm really, really glad that they're here tonight because, again, many of the students that are standing behind me contributed to every single one of our editions. Again, if not more, a lot of writing, not all of it could have been published. So I was really, really happy to see those kids show up after school, spend that mental energy writing and composing articles. So I'm very proud of them as well.
I'm over the moon. I want to hire them now to do all of my writing for me because that is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
The whole survey part where you pull together the data and put it into a graph, I'm just blown away. I'm amazed. And I can tell by Sophia's smile the entire time she's really proud of herself. So I'm really happy for you guys. Thank you very much for sharing that. Does anybody else want to? Okay.
I had a question for Sophia and Tula. I wonder, you have Mr. Smith in the audience, who you know is the principal at Hingham Middle School. I'm wondering if you have a pitch for perhaps a middle school newspaper. I think you're going there next year. So I'm wondering if you'd be interested in carrying on that tradition up at the middle school.
Right.
Looking forward to it. He just saw you say that. He's going to hold you to it.
Shoulder by one of the future teachers that you might have.
I'd also commend, I think it was a great way to have grade 1 through 5 students. So hopefully Sophia and Tula are thinking about who they can pass on the torch so that your work continues at East. What you started can continue for several years more, with some of the younger students taking the lead. So congratulations on that.
Yeah,
You should be very
for sure.
proud.
Good work, guys. Very much. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not sure if they want to stay. They're welcome to stay, but
Democracy or
they're
not.
probably not.
You know, no one ever takes us up on that invitation. Many times we put it out there, it's just. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
I'm really impressed. Okay, so we've got the adults now. Sorry. I'm going to move over to item 4. This is the questions and comments portion of our meeting. We have set aside 15 minutes to take questions and comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Our practice is to take questions and comments during any new business items. So if you have things related to any new business, if you can hang on to that. But if you have a question or comment, if you can raise your hand, and I will read the rest of the statement before I'll call on you. So anyone in the audience or on Zoom? Nope. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to item 5, the superintendent's report. Dr. Adams.
So in your packet, I gave you the weekly, biweekly superintendent report that I've been doing. I just want to spend a moment to talk about a mental health community resource. I think we have been working as a district to continue to share mental health supports that are available in the community, and trying to also work with the town to coordinate efforts to continue to support the mental health needs of our families and students. And I think it's important that we continue this ongoing dialogue. One of the things we've heard from the students as part of the wellness committee is that there is a stigma around talking about mental health. We've all benefited from either ourselves from seeking out mental health supports, or have someone in our family who has needed it at some point in their lives. And it's important that we destigmatize that ability to ask for help when needed, and seek out those resources not only for ourselves or for someone else we might see that's struggling. A very important resource that's available statewide is the Massachusetts Behavioral Health Helpline that anyone can access by using a toll-free number, as well as going directly to a website called masshelpline.com. In addition, there's 24-hour support. You can call and they'll direct you directly to a clinician or a peer coach that can allocate services for you, as well as you can walk right into a community behavioral health center to receive support. And our closest CBH is Aspire Health in Alliance in Quincy, and they have a website as well, aspirehealthalliance.org. I think it's important that we just continue to share and highlight these particular resources, and I'll try to do that on the upcoming superintendent reports, as well as using our district resources to do so, and look forward to working with the town as well to help to see how we can coordinate those resources. So I wanted to take a moment to sort of highlight that important piece first.
Do you want to give the phone number?
Sure.
Just for since you're recording.
Yes, and if you Google it, it comes right up, the Massachusetts Behavioral Health Helpline, and it's 833-773-2445. And again, it's available 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days.
Thank you.
In addition, where I added to the packet the MCAS Spring 2024 schedule. We begin this week with MCAS for our grade 10 students, who will start tomorrow taking the English Language Arts session, both Tuesday and Wednesday. And that'll continue with additional grades in grades 3 through 8 through the month of April with their ELA assessments, and then in May, math. This past month, highlighting a couple of things at the middle school, 25 8th graders traveled to Quebec, Canada, to practice their French speaking skills. You'll remember that you approved this trip last year at some point, and they were glad to have the opportunity to practice their French skills in Quebec, as well as partake in local cultural attractions, opportunities to enjoy local foods, as well as go snowshoeing, tubing, and enjoy. And we're grateful to the staff who participated in that program. We see that as a way to help generate numbers for French. Often Spanish has higher enrollment, and this trip can be an incentive for more students to enroll in French as well, and then continue that program up through into the high school. 8th grade civics classes were busy during the month of March, including holding a mock primary election. Students learned about the various candidates, their platforms and parties, and were able to cast their ballots during their social studies classes. on Friday. They also had two speakers, including Massachusetts Superior Court Justice Katie Rayburn, as well as members of the Jury Commissioner's Outreach Office to learn about the importance of jury duty as their civic duty. You remember this was a recent addition to the curriculum in the past couple of years with the social studies curriculum frameworks, is to highlight 8th grade civics as an opportunity for students to learn about involvement in civic responsibility and learning. And it culminates at the end of the year with an 8th grade civics project. As well as the high school last week celebrated, along with Opry, his 3rd birthday, and they were at the high school joined by comfort dogs in the area who helped the school celebrate the Opry's 3rd birthday. We congratulate the Hingham High School wrestling team and boosters for their contributions of $1,300 to the Veterans in Need Fund. This highlights an annual tradition during their Veteran Appreciation Night. We also want to congratulate 2 students, Emma Joyce, who took 1st place among grade 6 students in New England for the 2024 Will McDonough Writing Contest. Her essay called Courage to Soar stood out among 800 submissions across the state. So congratulations. She was honored last week at the TD Garden for her award. We also want to celebrate Julia Scapone, who was a grade 11 student who also received an honorable mention for her entry into the contest. We congratulate her in receiving that honor as well. Lastly, just an update from last meeting. There was you took a vote for a reduction in force that resulted in layoffs in order to address a budget deficit of $1.2 million. It was a total of 7.1 total positions. On March 14th and March 15th, the principals delivered layoff letters to approximately 10 staff. So you'll see that it's 7.1 total position, but 10 staff were impacted. And that's because we needed to apply the contractual bargaining agreements in seniority list in order to address that we had enough layoffs to cover the amount of positions needed. Remember, some were 0.5 positions. So in order to make sure that a higher senior staff member had access to a full-time position, we may have needed to lay off some additional staff. As the budget gets approved by town meeting, some of those teachers may be recalled back into 0.5 positions or open positions as they become available later on in the school year. I also added the March 1st enrollment. You'll see there's very little change. An addition of 3 students at pre-K, 2 students at K through 5, 2 students at the middle school, and -3 at the high school, but remain relatively stable.
Thank you. Okay, item 6. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I move over? No. Okay. Item 6 is communications. We've got 6.1, communications received by the superintendent. Dr. Adams, do you have anything? No. Okay. 6.2, student communications. I'm not sure if Alex or Slater or both are going to.
I'll start. So term 3 is coming to an end right now, and at the same time, the new sports season is beginning. This past Monday, no less than 481 HHS athletes began their spring season. Meanwhile, this past Sunday, March 17th, students completed course selections for next year. Not me, though. All seniors gathered last Thursday to learn more about the upcoming Harborman Helping Hingham Day, our annual day of community service scheduled for Friday, April 12th.
And then members of the HHS Unity Project began planning a first ever Adelia Week for the 8-year-old student at South School Elementary to raise awareness for pediatric brain cancer, which is a very good thing that's happening.
That's awesome.
Juniors are also preparing for their prom at the Venezia in Boston. Tickets went out yesterday, and I'm hearing lots of rumblings of excitement, so get ready for the flood of unusually well-dressed juniors. And then juniors are also getting ready for the National History Day at the state level for the students who made it on, and hopefully the nationals in the coming months.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. All right, 6.3, other communications. Does anybody on the committee have anything? I do have one thing, but before I share, I wanted to remind the community. I know that it is, it's really stressful when you are calling and reaching out to committee members or the administration when you're dealing with your children. As a mama bear or papa bear, it can be very emotional, and I understand that. I would please ask that you you do it with patience and respect for the people who are working here. We have a full central office who is working around the clock. They are working night and day, literally, to try to get all of the work done that we have going on here. I know of somebody who has come back to the district who took a pay cut, and it was because she wanted to help out and come back to the district so that she could help the children, and I really commend her for that. So I would just ask that you please be respectful of our employees. And I also wanted to remind people that as school committee members, we are generally responsible for 3 areas. One is to select and evaluate the superintendent. The second is to review and approve budgets for public education in the district. And the third is to establish educational goals and policies for the schools in the district. While that being said, we are always happy to talk to somebody about their individual circumstances. However, we can't necessarily advocate for a particular student. We use these stories to understand how the district is working. We all make ourselves available by text, by call, email. I frequently meet people for coffee. I will always joke that my previous position had prepared me well for this job, in that I was an auditor, and when you're walking into a company, auditors aren't always the favorite people, but you do it with grace and patience and listening skills, and I think we all do that. I want to just suggest that if it becomes threatening, I will no longer be able to meet with people or discuss over the phone, and I will ask people to just email me. So I want to communicate that as a reason for some of the behavior this weekend. So I appreciate your time. Second is that we received just recently a letter from Tom Mayo, who is the town administrator, and I felt like it's important to share this. I will share with the committee members, but I think the community might want to hear this as well. So I'm going to read it if you don't mind. To the school committee, the town of Hingham offers its municipal and school employees health insurance with a 50-50 contribution split, meaning that the town pays for 50% of the insurance cost and the employee pays 50%. As healthcare costs are rising, this has become a larger issue for employees. For the first time in over 30 years, the Select Board has directed the town administrator to initiate a review of healthcare contribution structure. This will be accomplished through the formation of a task force to research and identify potential ways to improve the town's offerings to employees while not negatively impacting the town's ability to provide services to the public and maintaining our commitment to the FY 24 through 28 financial management plan that limits annual budget increases to 3.5%. The task force will be organized by the town administrator and will likely be comprised of the town administrator or his designee, one or more resident volunteers, a representative from a school union, and a representative from a municipal union. The task force will be charged with completing a detailed analysis of the long and short-term financial implications of potential changes to the town's health benefit cost allocation. The work of the task force will be done outside of collective bargaining and is anticipated to begin in early May, following town meeting, and take several months. Once complete, the task force will provide a recommendation to the town administrator and to the select board. Throughout the process, the town administrator, or at his request, the task force will provide updates to the select board during the public meetings so that residents and employees may be informed of the task force progression in addressing this important issue. So I will, again, share that with my committee members, but I think that's a really good step. positive step forward on addressing some of the concerns that have been raised as far as our town employees. Okay, so I'm going to move over to item 7, unfinished business. We've got 7.1 policies, and I will hand this over to Allie Anderson, who's our chair of policy.
Thank you. And I know everyone online is here just for this part, so thank you for joining. We have a bunch of policies. These are all second reads, so I will go through them, and then if anyone has questions, we can discuss. The first one is FF. It's the naming new facilities, and we reviewed this just in light of the warrant article last year and the new town bylaw on naming, and we wanted to add in some language within our policy just to make sure that it matched, but also to give the superintendent the opportunity to develop procedures around the naming and dedication of any school or school-related property, structures, or facilities. So the procedure will include an application process and considerations about the duration of the name, so that there is some room within the policy that if something should happen that changes our opinion on allowing that name on a school property, we can have a way to address that. So that's built into some of the language in the bottom as well about there's no assumption of this being a perpetual naming right and that we reserve the right to remove it.
Anybody have any questions? Sorry. Any questions or comments?
Could this include, sorry, I'm not sure exactly where to put it, but just to clarify that the process after we make a recommendation, that it still has to go to town meeting? Just so that people, if they pick this up and read it, it sort of could feel like we were the ones approving the name? That,
Yes.
so I don't know if it goes
Well,
at
on the
very top.
the bottom.
paragraph.
Yep, the second.
Yep.
Thank you, Jen.
Yes. That would be the perfect place.
Okay, does that cover your concern?
And this was really about spaces within the school properties, not buildings themselves. So it wouldn't necessarily go to town meeting.
Right, I guess I'm thinking about just at the at the very top. Okay, because you're just talking about facility, I don't know.
Yeah, so this would
I
only
just wanna
cover
make
the
sure people
school
understand that
specific.
it's the inside the school.
I agree. The first paragraph does feel a little, like it
Like
feels
it
like
could be
we're
any
talking about the
Building.
entirety of the school,
Right.
but then
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
really isn't. It's everything else. So do we,
We can clarify that.
Okay.
Um, Hmm.
Should say naming up A. That matter? No.
If we're changing things.
Do we want to bring it, you want to bring it back to policy?
Yeah, why
or-
don't we
okay.
update it? We'll change the wording and then if you.
Thank
it's-
you. Okay.
That's why you get to
yeah,
ask
that's fine. I mean, I think it
questions.
could be as simple as, I'm not pushing to vote for it tonight, but you could just say naming, because later you say school space within a facility, it's that language kind of is pervasive
pick that
throughout.
up.
Maybe you just start that.
Yeah. That's easy enough. Okay, we will update that and we'll bring it back
Thank you.
next round. The next group of policies are some of the J policies. If you remember back in the fall, we updated our educational equity policy, JBB, and then MASC came back with some additional language around the protected classes, which you'll see in red under purpose, which just was really to provide a little more detail about what the word race actually includes. And they input traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture, hair type, hair length, and protective hairstyles within the rest of the protected classes that we added in the fall. So we updated the educational equity policy, and then there's several of other policies that fall out that have that same language, so we wanted to make sure we updated them all. So there's a couple from the J section within here. They also have some updated legal references within them. And then there's another batch that we'll bring next round once we update those. But these are the first couple just to match that educational equity policy.
Could I just clarify too
Yes.
that this was, I think they changed that language because of a law that was enacted in 2022 that added this description of what hairstyles. So
Yes.
that's where it came from.
And that's reflected in the legal references as well.
Any questions, comments?
Do you want to do this? Okay. I will make a motion to approve the updated language in policy JB, equal educational opportunities, as presented by the policy subcommittee.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then following that, just to match that language, we have 3 more policies. We have JB, equal education opportunities, JFBB, school choice, JIC, student discipline, and JICK, harassment of students, which that, I believe the harassment of students just has updated, I apologize, not harassment, the one prior. JIC, student discipline, just has updated legal references.
Any questions on this? No. Okay.
All right. I will make a motion to accept the updates to policy JBB, educational equity, as recommended by the policy subcommittee.
I will second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. And then the final one is also part of the J policies, the non-resident school admission. And we added a little bit more detail within this just to not only provide dates that someone would have to apply under this to, if they were a non-resident, to continue to attend Hingham schools, but also a little bit more detail about what a temporary student was considered. In some of those situations included someone was living in town and the family moved and they wanted to complete the school year, or in reverse, that someone was moving into town and perhaps their house was under construction or not ready, and then they wanted to start school within the district, or they were temporarily living somewhere else while their house was under construction or being renovated and they wanted to stay within the Hingham district. So we added some more details just about those specific type of situations and how someone and when someone would have to apply and request to be considered a temporary student.
Any questions?
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
So before, we didn't have any dates, but there still would be, there was like process or policy around superintendent making decisions, basically.
Yeah, they still had to apply via the superintendent to be considered a temporary student and be attending our schools. But we felt like it needed a little bit more definition so people weren't taking advantage of the policy, but also so there was a date in place by which they'd have to provide that information to Margaret or the superintendent.
And, okay. And that date is April, I'm just trying to, during the first read, we were like 4 hours into the meeting. So I will admit,
You weren't looking at all the details? What?
Completely comprehend everything that was going on. So April
It's April
1st, so just,
1st.
can you just walk me through, like, so if on March 31st, they would follow the previous version of this.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was April 1st, there's just,
So that's specifically if a family knows that they are moving out of town and want to complete the rest of the year.
Yep.
That they need to communicate that to Margaret by April 1st.
Okay.
And get permission, just because after,
okay,
a
that makes
certain
sense.
date, yeah, it no longer
Thank
really
you.
makes sense.
And then, sorry, following that. And then, so the other one is if they're going to be residing within a grading period. How long is a grading period? Are those different?
Yeah, they're quarters at
depends
the
on
high
the-
school, semesters at the
The
middle
elementary.
school, and we only do half year, like it's like half year at the elementary. I think the intent was to define, the current policy says temporary basis, and there's no definition of what temporary could be. I mean, temporary could be, hey, it's gonna be 6 months. This tries to define a little more what that temporary basis is, that it's meant to be a couple of months and not a whole year or 2 years, or a lengthier length of time.
Is there, but I think when I'm reading this, there can be exceptions to that? Like I'm thinking of a situation where somebody's house burns down and
Yes.
that can take a year, 18 months, 2 years even sometimes to rebuild. Okay, so so people can still make a request. The
Yeah.
general guidance is within a grading period.
Is it not reading that way to you?
It is, I think, in the last paragraph. I just wanted to clarify that because it looks like it says, should a question arise about the student's residency elsewhere, you can ask for more information.
Yeah, our original policy was really just that top
Yeah.
paragraph. So temporary was a very vague
Yes.
wording within that and really had no kind of parameters around what that meant or how long that meant. So the intent was to leave it open-ended enough that in a situation like you brought up, they still could go to the superintendent and request to stay here, and obviously different situations require different answers.
You ready for a motion? I'll make a motion to approve amended policy JFA, non-resident school admission as proposed by the policy subcommittee.
I will second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, so that's unfinished business. We'll move over to new business, item 8. 8.1 is to receive a report on special education program evaluation. So we've got Dr. Bob Cataldo who will take us through this.
Thank you. I'm shifting so I don't have to twist back and forth.
And just to get us started, I want to thank the principals who came tonight. Mr. Swanson wasn't available tonight, but I want to thank the principals who came to sort of hear along with us and show support for the findings and the work ahead in working towards the findings that are in here, the recommendations, and planning moving forward. So I want to thank them for coming tonight, as well as thank Dr. Cataldo for her leadership in the development of the report, as well as all the staff that was involved in providing either interviews or observations of their spaces. You'll see in the report, the evaluators shared that they felt welcomed and that people were forthcoming, and there's a deep commitment in the district towards the inclusion of our special education students and a desire to do the best by all of our students and meet their needs. Just to share a little bit about, and then I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Cataldo. The purpose of the program evaluation, remember, was to look at trends and patterns in referrals and our current placement of students in special education, was to determine the effectiveness and utilization of our current special education personnel and our programming, look for and determine the effectiveness of our current programming and interventions, identify instructional strategies across the district that can be replicated and strengthened, as well as improved, and support long-range planning to address the needs of the student population. It's a massive document and overwhelming to read. We started the process a couple weeks ago with principals, taking a first look at the document today. Our curriculum directors started to dig through the document. It takes several reads to sort of digest all that's in there. But I think there's a wealth for us to be proud of, as well as clear guidance on some very clear next steps and needs in order to continue to improve our programs for students with disabilities. Sherry, would you just advance the slide just a couple? Sorry.
Taking away my job. Or not. Oh, too fast. There we go.
Go one more to the next one.
Okay.
Just to remind a little bit, we had shared this earlier on in the school year. The methodology included the 3 evaluators who have years and years of experience in special education programs in multiple districts, both urban and suburban districts. Did a document review of program descriptions, looked at IEPs, census data, procedural practices that they reviewed for special education in Hingham. They conducted observations and walkthroughs through specific schools, all of our schools, as well as conversations with principals and meetings with individual special education personnel. They also conducted individual and group interviews were conducted that, and all of that wealth of information is what you'll see in the evaluation is sort of synthesized for as part of their commendations as well as recommendations. So the slides kind of walk you through almost sequentially through the report. And tonight we're giving you that sort of high level kind of summary. We didn't include, like you might say, well, why didn't you include this little piece? We tried to include as much as we could that was representative of the major themes and provide in the slides that we'll share tonight some of the summary points, high level, but hope to engage in continual conversations about what is in here over the next couple months. And I'll, as a preview to the end, our plan would be to come back in late June or early July with an action plan with some goals and some action plans that are developed in conjunction with sort of sharing and processing this document in sort of how do we address sort of some of the findings. We'll do that, hopefully planning to do that by late June or early July. So that's our outcome. And I'll pass it to Dr. Cadaldo to share some of the wonderful commendations that were in there that we're proud of.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And so one of the things I really want to stress is, first of all, it's been a real pleasure coming to Hingham this year. I feel grateful that you asked me to come. It's been a wonderful opportunity to get to know more people, great principals. We have, I think, a pretty good collaborative relationship. My phone rings at all hours. I ring back at all hours, and it's been really helpful to learn from everybody here in the district, and as well as look at what this report is suggesting to us, because there's certainly many strengths in the district, and I think people have been very concerned with this report. Is it all going to highlight what doesn't work? Well, that's not the case. In this case, as we talk tonight, it's going to highlight a lot of what does work in the district, and we should be really proud of everybody, because I've said this over and over and over. It takes a community to make it happen. And so, we've come out of a pandemic. We're just going to have to work a little harder to make it all happen. But there's a lot of great things happening here, and you'll see some of that tonight. You'll also get to see that there are some areas we have to strengthen. And it's sort of like running the marathon. We're on the heart of running the marathon. The day is approaching. I don't think any of us would wake up the day before and say, I'm going to run the 26.2 miles. Maybe Mary would, but I can't. And so it takes practice, and it takes repetitive work, and it takes examining our stride and looking at the shoes we wear and clocking our pace and collecting data and reflecting on it and making changes. That's exactly what this report is. It's really highlighting many things that we've done well. It's also helping us to understand some of the things we have to change so we can do better and meet with more success. Have we done everything perfectly in the last 5 years? Absolutely not. None of us are perfect. Have we done many things that are great for students in the last 5 years? Absolutely. And when the folks came out here, our 3 evaluators came out, they recognized that. And then at the same time, we're able to highlight some areas that we do have to put some focus on in order to increase our capacity. So I'm going to go back a slide to the purpose and just talk a little bit about the fact that they really looked at the trends and the patterns that are taking place in our district today in terms of the referrals, program placement, and special education. It's been a lot happening. You've had a lot of turnover, you've had a lot of stability, and everybody sort of has their own niche of how they do things. So they took a look at that. They also wanted to determine the effectiveness and utilization of the people who we are currently employing and how they do what they do in their classrooms. And they found a variety of outcomes to help us learn how we can calibrate in the district and make ourselves stronger. They looked at determining the effectiveness of current programs and service interventions. And we all know that when I arrived, that was one of the missions that I was given, is to let's see if we can do some entrance and exit criteria and really focus on what's happening in our programs. And we'll get into that further as we talk in the report. But certainly we did do that. As they came in and they walked into all of the classrooms, they didn't just pass by and say, okay, I've seen it, next class. No, they would sit for half an hour, 45 minutes, really get to know what was happening. And with 125 years worth of experience, they were able to make some really astute observations to help us. In terms of identifying instructional strategies, they took time to see what we do really well, some of our strengths, and some areas that we need to shore up going forward. And the big thing that I think is important, just like Dr. Adams has created a strategic plan to help direct and give a path to the district so we know what we will be doing the next few years here, they're also suggesting that we create a long-range plan that helps us look at our path for our students with special needs and how we can support them and be more successful, come together as a community and build our capacity as people. So I think that's really important to stress. As far as the methodology, I won't go back through that. Dr. Adams has already done that. But I think what should be really highlighted is that the folks came into the district and they reflected. They were in my office day after day. They would call me after an observation asking me for more documentation. I did some house calls and dropped things off in their homes. It was really, really thorough. And so I think with confidence, I can say they have given us a document that we absolutely can work with and we should work with. Of course, I always take slides with me because I say, I'll use my slides, and then I completely forget to use my slides. In terms of the district commitment, in terms of our practices, some of the commendations that they came up with, and now be ready because there's going to be several slides of commendations. But what they came up with in terms of our commitment, gradual efforts to introduce the tiered system of instruction and also universal design for learning. So I know that you've heard Ms. Roberts come in and talk about the MTSS structure. What are we doing in the general education setting? Because we know that is where it all begins. We are driven to try to make our students be successful in the general education classroom before we start to remove them and give them other kinds of services. And so they looked at that and they looked at universal design for learning, which is something I'm very passionate about. To me, that is it exonerates how all children have the opportunity to learn. We can find a way for all students. Again, in terms of support of elementary interventionists for general education and special ed, they really saw that that was a positive in our district, and we should take to heart about that information. Professional development opportunities for implementing the Into Reading program. We know that Ms. Roberts has put a lot of work into that, and our teachers are definitely reacting to the fact that they're learning something new and taking it to heart, and they're really instructing our students in a way that it has quality. A variety of after-school activities at the middle and high school. I know they saw a number of things that we do. They read about a number of things. I know that they spoke with the principals to learn more about what happens in their schools. And then a commitment to the social emotional well-being of students. They feel that we're doing a really great job there, and yet we are still going back and reflecting on everything that we're doing to make sure all of our students are strong inside so they can perform outside. In terms of, make this work, in terms of accommodations, again, they looked at the special education instructional programs that we have in our district. And so in terms of developing a continual program and services for the disabilities, we have many things in place now. Dr. Adams and I have sat repeatedly and talked about what else we need to add to this, but they commended us for the fact that we have already made strides in trying to create programs that begin at the preschool and will take students right post-secondary educational opportunities. That is to be complimented. They also saw that we have a real commitment to inclusion. We desire to have all of our students have the opportunity to be in general education settings to do most of their learning. We only want to remove them when it's not successful. We want to have them have that opportunity to work with their peers and learn with their peers. Again, the curriculum modifications that special education teachers do at the elementary level, they thought that it's a job well done by our elementary folks, that they've worked really hard. They find ways to tweak the curriculum in order to make sure it's accessible to all students. They commended us on our efforts to align the instruction in our special pull-out programs, our separate programs. And so we often know that we want to make sure our students are moving and are commensurate with their peers in their general education classroom. So we know our teachers are constantly coming together, reflecting what more do we have to do to change the curriculum to make it accessible. And then they also noticed the strong commitment of the district for wanting to develop specialized programs. That has been no easy feat. You went through a pandemic. You had to try to work virtually for so long. You came back together. You spent a lot of time trying to organize. And so they realized that there is a big commitment wanting all of our students to stay with us and to be successful. And so you do have a number of programs. You have the CLC, you have the lab, you have the RISE. We want to add to that, but they want to commend the district that they've done so much already. And we don't want to ignore the fact that those items happen to be in place. They had commendations for the IEPs, the individualized education plans. They said that students' IEPs really provided detailed pictures of the students, their strengths, their needs, their disabilities, clearly defined in many, many cases. They read approximately 150 IEPs in my office. I know because I got to make copies of all of them. But they read through all of them, and they found in most cases, this is what they saw. A really detailed picture between looking at the strengths and challenges of our students and then what was put into the IEP itself. They looked at the assessment data and noticed how it's integrated into the student performance profile, and then what steps needed to be taken for children to use that information, for the teachers to use the information, and build off of that to provide more structures for the children. They saw that the transition plans were complete. Those that were required after age 14, they took a look at how they were being written. Were they being written? Were they being written on time? Were they being written at the appropriate time? And indeed, they found that to be the case in most situations. Again, a reason for a commendation. And finally, they looked at our goals and benchmarks as to whether they're measurable and tied to the specific benchmark that's mentioned. And in most cases, that was the situation. A lot of districts do not have this happening, and so they wanted to make sure they highlighted this as a commendation for us. Sorry. There we go. In terms of the special education administrative personnel, they noticed that there was an evaluation team chairperson model in all of our schools, and they felt that it was well functioning, what we've asked our team chairs to do, how they run their meetings, what they do in follow-up, the number of times they reach out to parents. They examined all of that and felt that was a commendation. They again felt a commendation was the dedicated evaluation team chairs that were at both the middle and the high school and how they performed. And finally, they felt it's a well-functioning central administration personnel. And I do have to give credit in terms of, I know I'm in the office, I know that Elizabeth O'Neill is the assistant director and oversees the out-of-district placements, but again, we also have Charlene Fabrizio and Amy Muldoon, who are overseeing the coordination of special education at both the elementary and the secondary level, and that should be noted. And they felt that we really had a strong system in place for trying to oversee matters. In terms of factors that affect the programming and the services, they said an increase in special education numbers from 12% over the past 12 years. It's really gone up. They said that we need to create programs for inclusion of students with special needs. They saw increased costs of special education programming, especially when we look at out-of-district tuition. We know that this past year that we had a 14% increase. We know this forthcoming year that that's 4.69%. We don't know what it will be next year, so it's rapidly growing along with inflation. And so they noted that. They noted that transportation has escalated, and sometimes the cost of transportation can be as much as the tuition. They noticed, too, that we provide access to technology advancements to support our students in their environment. A lot of AAC devices, a lot of the software that carries it through. We've also had to follow up in terms of making sure damage control when things are broken, how we get more AAC devices into the hands of our students post that so they don't have a lag. And then they noted the considerable considerations of the students' needs with respect to the programs and the service options that we have. So they understand that these are factors that affect all of our programs and our services. In terms of more findings under the individual education program, the IEPs included a host of accommodations that we believe to be the best practice, but may not be specific to the disability of the particular student that we're looking at. They noticed that IEPs included measurable data to indicate those performance levels, but it wasn't consistent in how we incorporated it into specific benchmark data. So we need to put some more effort into that and look at it in conjunction with the goals and the objectives. They noted that the calibration of service delivery among special educators and related service providers to the particular needs of students is needed. And we're in the process of doing that right now. We're looking, and you'll see further on, we're looking at the entrance and exit criteria. We're coming together and talking about very specifically, how do we calibrate so what's said in East, if a family moved to South, they would hear the same thing. If they moved to Foster next, would they hear the same thing? If they moved to, I'm leaving one out, PRS, I'm so sorry, forgive me. PRS, they would hear the same thing. The idea being that we have to calibrate, and I think we've had a lot of turnover. We haven't had the opportunity to meet with that same kind of regularity. We're starting to do that now, and that has been the topic of discussion for the last 2 months. But we will have to focus more on that to make sure everybody understands why we put students on services, why we take students off services, and the quality of what those services are. And the last area is the extended year services are in the service delivery grid without school year data collected to document whether a student has substantial regression or not. And that's something that we've started this year to look at. And so as students are working on their ESY, we're asking our team chairs to pull together the data that represents why they need to have summer services, what kind of regression. So in the past, we might have had summer services given to a student in October because that's when their annual IEP was. And I said, not this year, we need to have data. We also had our team chairs attend an all-day conference on Friday about the new IEP. And one of the things that was emphasized was about extended school year services and how you need to collect data. And their recommendation was that maybe we not even look at it till April or May. Well, we don't want to go that late because we know a lot of our families have plans. But we do want to recognize that in the 6th week of school, we can't really be predicting all of our students' needs in the summer, and we might need more time to assess that. So that's something that we're talking about with our staff as well. Here is a finding that you heard me talk about once already, and I will bring it back, and that is the entrance and exit criteria. They really felt that after talking to everybody, interviewing people, looking at our paperwork, and observing that there was a true lack of understanding by our personnel as to what the entrance and exit criteria are for the different programs and services. So we've had that conversation. I know that this week we were working with our speech and language pathologists about entrance and exit criteria across the district. Our principals joined us. Tomorrow I'll be meeting with the team chairs again. We'll be talking about this very topic again. And so this is something we need to emphasize so that if a parent goes to South and they receive a service for a particular area of need, they go to Foster and they don't receive that same service, we have to ask why. We need to calibrate and make sure everybody has the same understanding across the district for the various needs of our children. They also talked about, in particular, speech and language eligibility needs to be calibrated. It has lost that calibration probably because of the pandemic. We need to come back and do it, and that's why we started with the speech and language pathologists, because we have the most faculty in that area, so we thought it was a good place to start. Criteria exists for physical and occupational therapies. We need to get more, though. We need specific benchmarks for child development and testing instruments and so forth, and we will look at that. And then some criteria exist for placement in the integrated preschool program, and I have been working with Ms. Costanza on that very topic for this year as we come to a conclusion, and also talking about what will happen in the fall. So we have begun some of this work because we got to have a hint of what was coming in this report. So I started some of those conversations early without people necessarily realizing that's what's going to be in the report. But it's some things that Dr. Adams and I were talking about as early as last July, noting that some areas had to be improved. Some findings in curriculum and instruction. Again, they felt the pull-out model of special education is the predominant model, And paraprofessionals are the ones that are giving a lot of the support in the general education classroom. We really have to look and make sure we're doing right by all our students, and that is what they need in the time. Would they be better served staying in the classroom? Do we have to work with our paraprofessionals and offer more kinds of training to make sure that they're able to support the students well? The AAC devices are available for students in specialized programs, and they are, but do we need more, and do we need more specialized training? The criteria for leveling of students in math needs to be clear for everybody that's part of the process. So through talking in their interviews, speaking with general education staff as well as special education staff, they found there wasn't a match in that case. So they're recommending that we look at that. They recommended that paraprofessionals provide the support for students with disabilities in the general ed classroom, but we need to develop that criteria so the paraprofessionals know what the roadmap is for them as well. And then one of the other things they brought out, and this will be one of our discussion points tomorrow in our team chair meeting, data is not consistently taken, analyzed, and integrated into best practices. We can't go into the classroom, think about what the next steps are, and say it's a gut feeling. Or maybe because we've done it in the past, we know it will work in the future. Every one of our children is different, and we need to respect that. And therefore, we need the data to show what is the path each of those children need to take. In some cases, it might be the same path, but we need the data to demonstrate it so we can be thoughtful in our decision making, not haphazard. So I think that it's really important. They happen to note here about the fact that except for the programs for services for students in the ASD category, that is true. Our teachers are constantly taking that data, but we need to do more, expand it to reach further audiences, and we will begin working on that now. In terms of our specialized programming, their findings, the programming for students with behavioral and emotional issues is limited. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. Dr. Adams and I have been speaking about that since last summer. We've noticed that a lot of our professors have come in, our principals have come in, and they've talked to us about what more can we do? Can we get a program together? Can we find a way to develop K through 12 thread for all of our students? Because again, it goes back to we're a community, we're a family, we want our children to stay with us. We need to invest in our children, which means we need to invest in our programs. They talked about the criteria for specialized programming is needed. So that would be the entrance and exit criteria. And that's something that I promised the CPAC that when I met them in the summer, I'd begin to work on that. And my goal is to have that up before the June month is over. Goal. But nonetheless, that is where we're heading. And then specialized classrooms have one designated special ed teacher and a minimum of one paraprofessional. Small group or individualized instruction isn't provided. They want us to make sure it's consistent. It's not always consistent. We want to make sure we have enough folks in our classrooms to cover all of our students. Here's an area that we don't always think about because it covers a smaller population of our students, transition activities. So in this case, more consistent communication in terms of transitioning students from one level to the next. So we realize that in the elementary grades, there's a number of grades they'll transition up. But when they get to 5th grade and they transition to 6th grade, we have to look at that more closely. We have to have a better way of introducing our students to the middle school. We have to have a better way of introducing our parents to the middle school so that it's a comfort area and the students aren't nervous when they come on the first day. So Amy Muldoon and Charlene Fabrizio have been putting together a program to work with our parents in 5th grade and help for them rise into the middle school. And I know they're working with Mr. Smith, so he can talk more about it than I can probably even at this point. But the fact is we're doing something this year. Again, and this falls on Amy Muldoon, 8th grade to 9th grade, we're doing another transition to make sure when students leave the middle school, which I'm sure was really scary for them when they came in 6th grade, but now they're used to it. They know their roads, they know the doors, they know the closets, they know where the cafeteria is. They're going up to the high school, which is much bigger. And so Amy is trying to put together a program so that this year, as students transition out of 8th grade to 9th grade, she's working with Rick Swanson to make sure that there's a path for our students to move up to the high school knowing what they're doing, and a path for our parents, particularly for our first-time parents. Parents who have older children that are in the high school, they have an semblance of how the high school works. not as much for our students maybe, but for students who are coming into the high school for the first time, for those families, we want to make sure that there's a program where parents feel comfortable and know there's a place where they can ask questions. So that is another area that we're working on, and we've been working on that since about November. Long before this report came out, we recognized there was a need, and so of course we know that the evaluators also saw that same need when they came in. Another finding was in the area of parent guardian awareness and support. So the folks, our interviewers, our 3 interviewers, were able to talk with parents. And parents are really honest. And they were in small rooms where they got to have really private conversations, which I think was essential. And so one of the things that really surfaced was that parents don't always feel welcomed or feel that they're treated as a team. And we've talked about this in our team chair meetings, and we'll continue to talk about it, that when we all come together in a team meeting, and if you have a child on an IEP, you know, you can't come to the meeting and all of the school folks say it should be this way, and the parents say we don't agree, and then we say, well, the school folks say it should be this way, and our parents say, well, we don't agree, and then we put it down because the school folks said it should be this way. We're trying to come up with a way that we are all a member of that team. That's essential, because when we don't have the children, other than 6 hours a day, families have them for 18 hours a day, and I'm pretty sure they know their children pretty well. So we want to make sure that this is an area where parents feel welcomed and feel that their voice counts when they're in a team meeting. And if they don't, then we need to know about it so we can make sure it happens. Again, will staff engage with parents? There's not always a clear and consistent process or protocol for people to follow, and it's not used across the district. So what might be used at secondary might not be used at elementary, and we have to make sure that we're using a similar protocol. It certainly makes it easier for families as they come in to know what to expect in advance instead of moving to another school and finding out it's a very different process. So I think that was a really helpful thing for me to see and to be able to talk with our team chairs, our principals, and our special education coordinators. They did find some findings in our preschool early childhood ed programming. Some of the items that are listed here we're already working on because we saw it in the fall and we on our own went to work on it, but it was recognized by them as well. So one of the things they noticed is that placement is determined primarily by age and the recommended services that are listed in the student's IEP. We have to be broader than that, and that's a recommendation that we go back and re-examine how we do things. The enrollment process and class composition with less community peers limits opportunities. So we know that we had our lottery this year. We're expanding our preschool. In some cases, our neurotypical peers still did not materialize as many as we would like. We're working on it. We're trying to make sure the classes are balanced. But they noted it too, and we want to make sure that we have the neurotypical peers for our students on IEPs to work with. Speech and language, OT, provide direct service to students. We want that, but we also want to make sure it's in the classroom so they can do the transfer. And then implementation of research-based early childhood ed curriculum. So we are looking now at the curriculum. Prior to this, our staff, who work very hard, I don't want to negate all the work they've done, but our preschool staff have worked very hard to create programming, but we need to have some scientifically based curriculum for our children to be working on in reading, in math, and other items. Sure, we can be very creative when we do art projects and other things, but we have to think about what curriculum we need to put in to make it research-based or scientifically strong. In terms of findings for our staffing, the counseling is provided through a coordination of school counselors and school adjustment counselors. So one of the things they found is that we have to have some better coordination among those folks. They need to have their particular jobs identified. We need to make sure they understand the criteria and expectations of what they do, and they're not always sure of their assignments, and we want to make sure that happens. We want to make sure there's coordination of therapies among all of the providers. We also need to put criteria in place, as it says, for the assignment and utilization of paraprofessionals. Sometimes we're not sure what our paraprofessionals are going to do. Sometimes we haven't directed them well. We need to change our practice. We need to change it now to make sure they're effective in supporting our students. And the district has invested in the development of our programs, But they also said we need to look at the consultation and monitoring of our programs at this point and strengthen that, because that is not an area that we've done well yet. So that is where we will look. In terms of inclusive practices, the district has a commitment to inclusion. Absolutely, we can see it at every single grade. And I have never seen people work harder to make sure children feel included. They're talking about the multi-tiered system of supports been established in the elementary level. We need to work a little bit harder at the secondary level. And one of the points they made is that the DCAP is out of date right now, and you have to come back and update it and then use it, because there's a lot of great things in it, but you'll add great things to it, and we want to make sure that it's used by everybody and doesn't just sit on a shelf. In terms of the professional development, we need to have more frequent professional development, as well as in-depth, really subject-based, directed for each person's role of what they do. So whether it's instructional, behavioral, grading of students with disabilities, whatever, we need to put more effort into it. And I believe Dr. Adams and Ms. Roberts and I have looked at some of the professional development that has to happen in the fall in order to support all staff and make sure everybody is equipped to receive all of our students. We have to look at the specialized professional development for staff who are in our pull-out programs and find out what they need and make sure they feel fully supported. And if there's an area of need, that we make sure they get that. And then we need to support the increased collaboration among the special education staff and make sure they're all talking with each other. But there's recommendations as well. So those were our findings. We've had commendations, we've had findings, and now here are some of the recommendations that they came forward with to help us. In terms of the IEPs, they need to be tailored to the individual needs of our students that can be understood by anybody who works with our children. So when our teachers come in the fall and they have a special education student in their classroom, they receive the IEP, they sign off that they read it. We want to make sure the language is appropriate so they understand everything that's in the IEP, and if not, feel comfortable in asking. The big thing here is the entrance and exit criteria. We are really focusing on this. As I said, we really need clear and concise entrance and exit criteria for a lot of areas, and it needs to be posted to our website so that parents don't have to second guess what we're doing. Parents can look to our website, other districts do it, and see how we function as a district. The curriculum instruction, we have to look at all of our best practice, the evidence-based best practice that we put into special education instruction, and make sure all of our programs are well supported. And as far as data collection, we have to look at a review of the needs to be conducted of what data we are collecting, why are we collecting the data, how are we using that data to improve the instructional needs of our children. In terms of more recommendations for our specialized programs, the district needs to analyze the current profile and needs of our population. We want to make sure we know who our students are, and we have to strengthen capacity so that we can reach all of our children. We have to look at our transition activities a lot further. We want to make sure that everything is sequential and consistent. We want to make sure it works from grade to grade, and we want to make sure, particularly at the secondary level. We also, I thought this was really important, parent-guardian awareness and support. Who else but our parents who bring their children to us every day and trust that we will work with them 6 hours a day and send them home in a better place than when they came. It asked us, as a district, we need to develop effective strategies to improve parent awareness and understanding of their child's disability. And so that would be something that might happen in an IEP meeting, but it's also something I will bring back to the CPAC and ask how we can do a better job at bringing things to the community. And I thought that was a highlight that I wanted to make sure was in my head, and I wanted to highlight to you. And then in terms of preschool early childhood ed programming, we really need to re-envision and create a high quality early childhood ed program for our children so they're prepared when they come into the elementary schools. And we want to reflect on the current profile and think about what our children's need now, what our families need now, and make sure they're receiving it. Other recommendations included special education teachers as well as related service providers and team chairs, that we want to look at how we use our staff in the district, how we allocate our resources in the district, and we need to maximize our effectiveness. I'm sure that's not a surprise to anybody. That's what we want to do in everything we do in life. But this is something we need to really take a look at in our own district under our own roof. Counselors and counseling services, we have to look at the roles and responsibilities because there's some confusion even among the counselors, what they should be doing, where their position stops, where another position begins. So we'll be looking at that. In terms of our paraprofessionals, we need to really define who they are and what they need and what we ask them to do according to how they're assigned and who they're assigned to and what they're assigned for. That is something that needs to have clarity. We've known it all year, and so we'll be looking at it moving forward for the fall. And then in terms of administrative oversight of the programs, services, special education personnel, it needs to be redefined, it said. We need to go back and take a look at it. It might require structural changes, not today, but moving forward in the future. And I'm sure that Dr. Adams is already thinking about it based on these recommendations. And then further, the inclusive practices. We really need to be a district that we make this a priority to meet the needs of our students. That means we don't do training in the fall, drive-by training, and then we don't come back to it until the following fall. I kind of think of it like CPR training. I remember I got trained in CPR in September, and I was very grateful nobody ever needed my assistance because by October I really couldn't remember everything I learned. It's the same thing. We have to come back and review it and work with folks and deepen their understanding so that it's more effective for our students. And then in terms of professional development, we need to develop a more comprehensive and what I believe is a more robust approach for our development. Now, this was written now, but in parallel, Dr. Adams and Ms. Roberts have been looking at the professional development all year and have really been refining it in the last 6 to 8 weeks. And that's before our report even arrived in front of us. So I think it's important to say that we recognize that need as well as the administration having that need. So now with all that, can I give you a quiz? Okay. So one of the things I wanted to bring out is what do we do with all this information? Because I gave you a fraction of what's in that report. There's many, many, many more commendations. There's more recommendations, and there's certainly more findings. But we need to work together to make it better. And so here are some next steps that they recommended for us. Review the findings and recommendations with various stakeholders and subgroups. So we know that Dr. Adams spoke about the fact that she has shared it with principals, she has shared it with directors. I have shared it with the assistant director as well as with the coordinators. We know that we'll share it with CPAC now that it's been presented at the meeting. I don't know if Mr. Cosman plans to present it at the special education subcommittee, so there's another place it will be presented. And again, I'm sure we'll have a series of meetings to talk about it. It will get up onto the website. I'm not sure what the date of that is. I'll leave that for Dr. Adams to decide, but it will happen. They also, we're going to look at outline a 3-year plan to start to take apart what's in that report, what are the things we can do now, and what are the things that we can build out that we should be tackling as we go along, because we know we can't do it all at once. That's a reality. And there are some things that really have to happen now, and there are some things that we can allow to be down the line. But we want to take a look at the things that have to happen now and make sure that those get into the first year and then build off of that. And I think that's the report that Dr. Adams was saying late June, beginning of July. In terms of the research, develop and plan for the social, emotional, behavioral health programming. We know we need to have some programs, a thread from elementary to middle school to high school. We have children who are crying that they need us, and we really have an obligation to provide for them. We should show them we want them to be with us. We can have them in our schools and work with them and make sure they're successful, and when they leave, they feel great about themselves. We need to continue to strengthen our access to the research-based reading programs, into reading in other areas like Orton Gillingham and other scientific multisensory approach to reading, as well as looking at MTSS and shoring it up even further. I know we've done a great job so far, but we need to stay on our toes and continue to do it. We need to support a scheduled development at the secondary level that aligns to our services that are at the secondary level. and team at 8th grade level to support the scheduling of those special education students so that they're in all the right places. And then they suggest that we outline the entry and exit criteria for current programming. That's the third time that's been mentioned as I've gone through these slides. So that should tell you that's a sticking point that we really have to look at. And that will be one of the more immediate things that we're working on right now, right until the end of the year. So not much tonight. I'm really, I'm pleased with the report. Again, some of the items that were in the report are not surprises to us. They're not surprises to you. And they're not surprises to what we need to do for next steps. Some of them, though, helped us to have better light as to what our steps need to be as we go down that path. The most important thing is that this is helpful for us to build capacity for us. And you've heard me say it over and over. I'm sure I sound like a broken record. We need to find a way to make sure we can have our students grow up with us, not outside the boundaries of the Hingham Public Schools. I'm really emphatic about that. And I feel if we follow the recommendations of this report, we find a way to build it in over the next 3 years and build that capacity. That's exactly what you're going to do. And that's exactly what the result will be. So I thank you for listening to me. I thank all the principals who have been exceptionally supportive. I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to collaborate with than these folks sitting here, and including Rick, who's not here tonight. But, a group of folks. And I don't know if you have any questions or your ears are just exhausted from hearing me speak tonight.
I'm sure there are questions. It's a very extensive report. As Dr. Cataldo mentioned, this will be up on the website. I've had a question about will it be made available? It will be made available. Typically, when we put out our school committee report that basically goes through the meeting, we always attach a link to our full packet. So this is in our packet, so parents will have access to that. It's a lot to digest. I know we've been talking about this for several years, but to have this in one place is fantastic. And as you mentioned, it's not something that's just going to go up on a shelf. I think we're going to continue to refer back to this. So I appreciate you taking the time to go through this. So I'm going to open it up to my committee members. Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Cataldo. Just one quick question. With the review of the findings, how will teachers and paras get that review and opportunity to look through it? Like, will it be staff meetings, department meetings?
I should have taken that drink at that moment. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The mic was probably really loud. So I am sure that we will work with Charlene Fabrizio as she goes to the elementary. I am sure we'll work with Amy Muldoon when she works with the secondary. I am sure that the principals will share some of what's in that report with their staff at their staff meetings. And as far as our special education staff, now that we've presented here, I'll begin to put out some memos that will talk about some of the report, what's in the report, and encouraging them to make sure they read it online and then asking questions if they have any. I mean, it is something that's going to bring us together. You think about what would be tangible that can bring everybody together to have a common goal. This report really does. It doesn't matter whether you are a special education staff member, a general education staff member, a parent, a school committee member, a principal, and a central office person. We all share in this. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really great that we have a tool that we can create a map for us for the next few years.
Great, thanks.
Carrie?
Thank you. I have three things. One is you mentioned the DCAP, that's District Curriculum Accommodation Plan. That's more of a general ed?
Yes, I'm going to turn to Ms. Roberts, who can talk about it in detail.
Yeah, no, I was just hoping you could, or somebody could talk about what exactly it is and what would be entailed in something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
District Curriculum Accommodation Plan is a list of accommodations that are available to all students in the general education setting. So we had not updated that document in a number of years, and we have been working on that consistently this year during our curriculum council meetings. We're very close to wrapping up that work, but we wanted to be as inclusive as possible in the development of the DCAP, and so our curriculum directors worked with our content area departments, and this document was built from the ground up. So teachers had input at the secondary level through department meetings. At the elementary level, they had input through their faculty meetings.
Yeah.
And so again, we're very close to finishing that document.
That's great. I just anecdotally, I think some of the things that are thought of as accommodations for kids on IEPs really help everybody in the classroom. So I think it's great that we're doing that. The second one is you mentioned raising parent awareness, and thank you for highlighting that. I think that's really important. And I did read through the document, as you said, it's pretty. There's a lot in it. I was wondering if there was anything about listening to parents, just thinking about the parent perspective as like they're an equal member of the team, and some people didn't feel that way. But also, I mean, as a parent of kids with disabilities, we're in all the doctor's appointments from the time they're little, and we're looking kind of taking a longer view maybe than someone who has teachers or staff who have them just for a year. So I'm wondering if there's any thought, or maybe this is getting too far ahead, and that'll be part of the.
It's not
the plan. Okay, but listening to, and because the awareness can kind of go both ways. Yeah.
So, I've been giving this some thought because it's very important to me. Years and years and years ago, a woman by the name of Nancy Sonneman wrote about the other 18 hours of what happens at home. And Nancy is a good friend of mine. But I think it's critical that we speak with the teachers, obviously, and hear from the teacher's viewpoint, and also hear from the parents. I think using the CPAC and maybe creating some sessions through the CPAC might be the way to go. I don't want to speak for them because they're not here tonight, but it is something, they were aware that we're doing this. They're very anxious to see this. And so I want to make sure that we include them because they might have ideas of how to reach the community more than I do even. But we do have to come up with some sources. I know we're in a busy time of the year, and so maybe something will happen between now and June, but I think it's more critical that starting in September, one of the things we obviously want to do is teach parents about the new IEP, which is a different topic for another night, but nonetheless teach them. And that would be like the stepping stone of how to be a good team member, how do we make sure everybody's being heard.
That's great. And I guess my last question is, what surprised you about this report? Was there anything, you've raised a lot of these things before, so is there anything that really surprised you?
I don't know if I was surprised. I think I would rather say what pleased me was so many of the accommodations that said to me, I don't always get to be in the classroom to see some of this, and I'm here, so I might not be as impartial, although I haven't been here long, I might not be as impartial as these folks who came in, who were truly impartial, came in with a very clear slate and was able to go in. And they've been in many, many districts in terms of doing this work. And so for them to see how many good things are happening in our district, I want to make sure as this report goes out that nobody loses sight that there's some really great things happening in this district. I know that sometimes people get upset and sometimes that is what seems to bubble up, but I don't want that to be the only thing that bubbles up. I want to have bubble up the really great things and celebrate what's already going well in this district.
That's great. Well, thank you. It's a really comprehensive report, and I think there's a lot to chew on, which is great. And it's just the idea of having a strategic plan for this department, I think, is fantastic. So thank you.
I'm very excited
Yeah.
that you'll have something to move forward with.
Yeah, thank you.
Matt?
So a couple of questions / comments. Thank you for the presentation. It was very helpful, and I would agree. There's 53 pages in this report. It is very, I think, a very well written report. I think this is a good summary, a very good summary. One question I have is around commendations versus findings, and kind of the focus of the report, because I think it is important to recognize there are very good things going on. That's a true statement, and those are highlighted here. And we've also talked a lot. There's obviously room for improvement. And I think we've made improvements, but there's still, I think a lot of room for improvement.
Always.
So there's 2.5 pages in the report on commendations, 15 pages in findings. The findings are not all opportunities. I'd say most of them are in reading through it. So how do we think about that? Because what I want to read here, frankly, is not about, well, I would love if it was all commendations, but what we're really charged with doing is how do we make this better for each for each of those students, for the parents, for the teachers. Is that, I don't know, did the people who wrote this report say, this is pretty typical that, 20% of that portion would be commendations versus findings, or wow, there's way more findings in this than other districts.
They didn't comment on that, so I can't, obviously, I can't say. I think a lot of what we'll work on will come with making a plan in June, so I wouldn't say right now. I also think what would be fair is for everybody to have a chance to read it and sort of weigh in on it. You know, there might be people who say, I don't agree with this because, and it might give us an element of thought that we hadn't thought about and help with our direction. The one thing I know is, sure, we have areas to work on, but there are some things that are working well, which is what I emphasize, and I don't want to lose sight of. And then we'll take the areas that we need to work on, and we're going to have to line up what we do in year 1, what we do in year 2, and what we do in year 3. And we need to make sure that our faculty is on board and working with us in order for this to be successful. So I want to really highlight the fact that we're in this together. But in terms of what we do first, what's the percentage? I don't know what any other district had. I would have to call them up and say, hey, could you tell me? And even then they might not, but nonetheless, you know, there were findings here. We wouldn't have called them if we didn't have findings and if we didn't have questions. So that's a good thing. I think the big thing now is for us to take it and really think about it, take it in, really meditate on what's in there and try to come up with a thoughtful plan for moving forward.
And
I do remember asking them the same question, sort of how would you distinguish the sections of the report? And I think commendations were things they wanted to highlight, sort of that you should feel equally proud of. Sure, there might have been other things they could have highlighted, but they decided to highlight some very specific areas that they felt there was sufficient evidence across multiple areas to commend us on. The findings, I don't know if it's 20%, you know, positive and 80% things we need to work on. It felt more like it was more 50-50, a little fairer. It was a sort of a general overview in those buckets of things that they noticed or heard that they wanted to highlight. So those are the kind of summary of what they found. And then the recommendations are the areas that you could see when you read the report. You'll see that they're repeated in findings in several places, and they're sort of summarizing, here are what we recommend that you focus on. One area, when you read the report, if you looked for entrance and exit criteria, you might find that in 15 places. And so that's clearly a place where they sort of recommend. If you highlighted professional development and role clarification, whether it was special education or related service providers, you would find that highlighted in several places, and that sort of then sort of serves as recommendations. So I think they kind of, when you read the whole report and it's in one sitting and you sort of see the themes, I think there is a connection. You don't necessarily perhaps see it the first time. Barbara and I have seen and read it several times and have talked about it several times, so you get a deeper understanding of some of those connections that are made with each read and review of it. Does that make sense?
It does,
We asked that very question of them, of why this particular organization. And I think it does make sense once you dig in and get a clearer sense of the whole report. And how it
Reading
worked.
through it too, I felt like there was a lot more detail around the findings than the accommodations too, and which is
agreed.
good. You know, we need that too.
Yeah, and then there's consistent themes throughout it. It's re-emphasized each time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can I make one other comment / question? So I appreciate the breadth. It was comprehensive, but still brief on the recommendations. I'll just point out when people read through this, there's a lot of specificity in the recommendations, which is awesome. Like, I think that's really helpful. So that was a good summary, and I think appropriate for this presentation. But there's actionable recommendations. So I think the job over the next couple of months, which you've already said, but I'll just reiterate, is taking that kind of like lengthy list and saying, you know, what is the priority order, both in the short and the long term. And then I have a question on that, because I think getting feedback from CPAC, from parents, from teachers, from administration, from, you know, us is important. I also think having an actionable plan, you know, in June is really important. So is it, and maybe you said this, but how, are we trying to incorporate feedback in the next couple of months while we create that plan? Is that a part of it? Or is it, we'll create the plan in June as a sort of pretty good idea of where we're going, that would then be the opportunity for us and the public to give feedback.
I think our intent was to share the document as widely as we can over the next couple months, have discussions, and sort of hear what folks say about the plan, about the program evaluation, what comes up and bubbles to the surface. We'll identify a plan that sort of tries to identify both the short term, what can we immediately start to address, and sort of low-hanging fruit, kind of like let's tackle those things. I think by doing that also it allows us to have success on some items really quickly, and then small successes then generate some longer term success and buy-in from multiple stakeholders. So we'll develop a plan, but like every plan, it's it's only as good as you start implementing it, and you have starts and stops, and sometimes you move faster in some areas, and sometimes you move slower because you haven't had you overestimate your ability to move forward. So any plan will be developed for as much feedback as we can gather through June, but then being able to start and then continually to develop the plan and revise it. My intent is we have a plan, and then we, like we did this year, Barbara's come at least twice, and we'll have her come again sometime in the spring to provide an update on the goals she established. These will become the new goals for the department, with benchmarks and opportunities to provide feedback on how we're making progress toward these, and some honest dialogue of where we've had success and where we're still struggling and need to make improvements. So we want to make it a transparent process so that it's something that it's an ongoing document. This doesn't go on a shelf, nor does the action plan go on a shelf. It's a live document that is working towards real improvement in the programming that we offer students with disabilities.
That's great.
Just make a speech. Sorry. Please go ahead.
Got the whole row down here.
Yeah.
And just really to follow up on that, I think Barbara said several times throughout, and it's worth repeating, that there were things that were not surprises to you both or to the whole administration, and that already had kind of bubbled to the surface and were in the works. So I know for many parents it feels very urgent, and people were really excited to see this report and the findings and the recommendations. But there is ongoing work on some level. The professional development was mentioned, the preschool and bringing on more peer models was mentioned, and several other things throughout. And so that work will roll into that action plan, but it doesn't mean that between now and June there's not things that are actually being worked on.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is already old.
Yeah.
So some of the work at MTSS at the elementary level, which you've heard throughout the year around the PLC work that the staff is doing, meeting on an ongoing basis to review data. Some of what's indicated here, we've moved forward significantly since October, since they've been here. We've moved forward in preschool, the program development, and the addition of some full-day classrooms that we're adding at Foster, the new elementary school building. So we've already made progress. We've done some discussions and some work around the curriculum at preschool. So there's been some movement, and so we're not at a standstill, but still areas where we need to continue to improve.
And
so
I think it's good that there was someone from the outside coming in, and things that you saw and already were putting into place, they were saying you need to do those too. So I think that's helpful to see that feedback.
I think the new IEP has been an opportunity to sort of engage in some of the discussions around IEPs, in some of the recommendations. It's just an opportunity to say, hey, let's use this new tool as an opportunity to reset expectations for what's now expected, as well as what's best practices for IEP development. And I think it's also an opportunity to engage parents, right? Here's a new tool. How do we engage parents as equal partners with this new tool? So it's probably, it feels overwhelming at the moment because there's so much, but I think the new IEP also provides an opportunity for us to support some of the recommendations that are being made here.
I've often said sleep is overrated.
I think once you get over, holy cow, this is a lot. I think then you also see in between, you see, oh, there are opportunities here for us really to move forward as to better meet the needs of our students with disabilities. So.
Question on the 3-year plan is who will be part of that process? Is it the administration team, the Dr.
all
Adams probably has the best
Dr.
answer for that.
I think we'll engage groups in looking at the document. What often happens is as different groups are looking at it, you can see and you could hear some of the emerging themes that you could probably, if we guessed and did a poll here of what some of the emerging themes would be, we could come up with some goals. And we did this today with the curriculum directors, and there's some consensus on some goals that need to be set and even some initial action steps that need to be taken. And so I think we'll collect that information as we're sharing the document and then start to coalesce what it might look like for the first year. And then sort of have some outlines for the second and third year, but know that that plan is going to need to be revised as we move forward and get started in the work.
Yeah, because one of the over themes that's mentioned was obviously professional development. I saw a lot of references to updating job descriptions, roles, responsibilities, policy procedures, all that. I saw that as mentioned frequently. And then, do you mind if I just read one little thing? It's like 3 lines that I just thought.
53 pages.
It's 3 lines. I mean, it's just, everyone in this room I know knows this, but it's just something I just want to emphasize. It says that parents are an essential part of the IEP process in their child's education. The district needs to be open to their input and have reasonable discussion that is respectful and mindful of their concerns. Although there may be disagreement, there always should be open dialogue to discuss these issues. And that just really stood out to me a lot. That it is a partnership, and Carrie mentioned it earlier. Ness mentioned it earlier too, and I just wanted to read that.
Yeah, I think Dr. Cataldo has helped us this year and sort of just
Absolutely.
engage in conversations around special education that begin with, and I think Carrie mentioned it earlier, around listening.
Yeah.
And it starts with listening and then being responsive. We can't always agree.
Right.
And we may disagree in the end, but we can respect and hear thoughtfully each perspective and try to see where there are areas for consensus and move forward in those areas of consensus and continue to work on the places that are disagreement. So we're grateful for Dr. Cataldo sort of continuing to facilitate those conversations with the families and engaging with CPAC as a partner in those conversations. So if you want to add anything.
No, I thank you for listening, and just, I'm looking forward to the path that we're going to put out there for everybody. I think it's exciting.
I just wanted to add one other thing. So there's a good discussion about the fiscal aspects of special education in here too. I just suggest that we share this with ACES and ADCOM as well. And, if we're going to, increase the programming available in town, I think we want to loop them in sooner rather than later and do that. I'm all for it, but I think we need to loop in the finance people. So.
Sounds great. Before you go, is there anybody online or in the audience that has a comment or question? Again, I appreciate you'll be able to get this and digest it, but I wanted to give an opportunity. I see Diane DiNapoli, if you could state your name and address and ask your question.
Hi, Diane DiNapoli, 16 Gardner Street. Thanks for taking my question, Ness. Thank you, Dr. Cataldo. It was good to hear some of the positives and some of the areas where I think we know there's some room for improvement. I have just a couple questions. Again, I haven't had the opportunity to look at the report, but I will be reading it. Did this cover any, you discussed transitions, which I think is an area I'm learning about as having a 16-year-old and one graduating. Was that covered transitions post-secondary and as someone might graduate out of high school, college bound, and opportunities for students in Hingham who will be in the system in one way or another till 22? Was that looked at or will it be in the future?
Well, yes, definitely. Actually, we're looking at it now, Diane, just so you know that the Amy Muldoon and I have been talking about that along with Charlene Fabrizio and Liz O'Neill. We meet once a week as a group for 3 hours, and that's been on our page just about every single week because we want to make sure that we have more robust programming, and we've been discussing next steps to increase that robust programming. So we're looking at some things that hopefully can happen in the next 12 to 24 months that we think are really needed in the district for students leaving high school who might not be going on to an educational four-year college, but will need experience in the world so that they will be independent and be able to take care of themselves and work and earn a living that will cover their expenses.
One of the things that we've done is look for strategic partners for specialized programming. So, for example, Landmark has been working with the lab program for about a year and a half, and so our intent is to continue that relationship with Landmark as a resource to our staff and to support the needs of students in developing a K through 12 program. With RISE, we enlisted NESC, correct?
NESCA, NESCA.
NESCA as a partner to provide training and expertise not only to the staff to support individual needs of students, but also administration to help us with designing professional development. And so I think this area of post-grad, we want to look at, this is in particular notice with our RISE program, is how do we create a pre-K through 12 post-grad program transition so that the program is seamless for students. And we're hoping to find those kind of strategic partners that'll allow us to do that. We've had some conversation about who is the right strategic partner to help us develop some SEL, behavioral health kind of programming, pre-K through 12 as well, and trying to identify something. These are just fields that are just emerging and changing so rapidly. So by having someone who can serve as an expert to help us develop in-house capacity is really something that's a best practice, as well as allows us to be the most up-to-date in creating programming that's most receptive to the needs of kids and the most research-based and relevant programming as possible. So I think this is an area too where we've already done some work on post-grad at the high school and RISE and have some plans for next year. But it's an area that we do need to continue to develop, and that's specialized programming. So, yeah.
Oh, Ness, can I just clarify, was that what is current and what is next proposed? Is that in this plan or is it not? Was this avowed?
I think they talked about some of those opportunities, but not in depth the way that you were asking, I think, Diane, in fairness.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Amy S.
Hi, this is Amy Sinnott. I live at 21 Bradley Park Drive. I apologize. I've been trying to figure out how to change my name as it's displayed, and I can't figure it out. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for even undertaking this this audit, and it is really important information, and I'm not going to get into any of the details because I've not read it, and so I'm not going to try to speak to any of the content. But I am one of the parents that is, I mean, really and truly just exasperated and really upset and very angry sometimes about it just feels like the district level just really doesn't get it, and I know that to hear you think that you're starting to do a better job of listening, please let me tell you that I haven't noticed it. I don't doubt that you're working very hard. I do not doubt that that you mean well, but I really need to be sure that the school committee and the district leadership understands that there is a serious trust problem with well, I'll just speak for myself. I have two kids in the public schools for many, many years. One's a senior, one's a freshman at the high school. They've had different, wildly different experiences. They are thriving, and all of their success is due to frontline educators and student-facing staff. There were times during their years with the Hingham Public Schools that the district was actively working against me and my children and their teachers. This is serious. This is really serious. It causes serious distress for families, for students. It isn't okay, and you haven't even begun to address it. You really have not. And I'm going to give you one example to help you understand why the new leadership has not done anything to start to build trust for me. I'm just one person, but just letting you have my perspective. So when the search for Suzanne Venice's replacement as the Director of Student Services, when that search was being done, which of course resulted in, it was a failed search and then obviously resulted in the appointment of Dr. Cataldo as the interim. There was a parent forum and there was the opportunity to submit questions in advance of it. I am a lawyer who has been doing work in disability, in the education, in higher education for many years. I know this stuff. I have very specific concerns. I submitted a very long list of questions. They were very specific, and they are exactly the types of questions that I have asked when I have been part of the hiring process in my own professional life. They were very specific about making sure that whoever comes in understands the legal obligations. I mean, this position is a compliance position. There are laws that are being violated on a regular basis. And not one of my questions was included in the district's questioning. Not one. I understand there was lots and lots and lots of questions that were submitted, but not only were my questions not included, but nothing that really got, in my mind, to the substance of making sure that the person in this position is competent and qualified and understands that their first and foremost obligation is to meet the basic minimum requirements of the law. And also, seemed very much like the interview process was stretched out and out and out until, there's no time for parents to ask questions. Only one of the candidates, when she was given the opportunity to give her final statement, she said, actually, I would rather not use my time for that, and I would rather open up the floor to parent questions. And otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to ask any of my questions. So I don't question the fact that I'm not saying there's sinister motives or anything like that, but I'm telling you that it's infuriating. And you can, anyone who is, Dr. Adams, Dr. Cataldo, look up my last name, look up my kids, and you'll start to understand my history with the district and why I am just exasperated at this point. So I understand. I took some notes here about, that Dr. Cataldo wants to make sure that we're not just focused on the negative, and sometimes just the negative stuff bubbles up. It's because It's because we don't hear it from you. No, I'm not gonna, come to a school committee meeting and start telling everybody everything I think they're doing great. I do that with my teachers. I do it with my kids' teachers. I do it at the school level. I have done it for years. But no, we're not. And those of us who are trying to sound the alarm, we're just going to get louder and more annoying because I do not believe that there is a real respect and appreciation for the damage that has been done and is continuing to be done. That is what I just need you to understand is where some members of this community are. And just please keep that in mind.
Thank you for your comment. Would you do me a favor? Would you be willing to come to my office and have a conversation with me outside of this meeting?
Amy, I'm not sure if you heard the question.
I don't know if my mic's on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I put myself back on mute when I was done. Yes, I would love to. I would love to.
All right,
I've been trying to get someone to listen to me. I would love to come and talk to you.
All right, so just so you know, my schedule's like super packed, but if you're willing, call the office. Let's figure out a time to meet. If you can call tomorrow.
Okay.
At least leave a message with Lisa White, my admin, and let's find a time to meet.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Heather Chisholm?
Hi, Heather Chisholm, 8 Blackhorse Lane. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I am one of the chairs of CPAC, and I just want to say we're so glad that this has been done. We look forward to reading all 53 pages. We've been asking for this evaluation for a few years now, and thank you, Dr. Cataldo, for getting the ball rolling on this. So one of the things that I noticed that was highlighted many times in the report is the exit entrance criteria for our programming. We've been asking this for this for years, so it's a little frustrating, but we really believe that this is something that needs to be an immediate goal. It needs to be established. I know Dr. Cataldo, in our last meeting, we said that it's being worked on. It has to be established by the end of the school year. Parents cannot simply accept these placements if they don't have the information about them. And the other point I'll just make is the evaluation of these programs. We need to be really consistent in evaluating these programs. So glad that those two things were highlighted, and I think specifically those two things need to be immediate goals. I know Matt had talked about actionable items. Entrance exit criteria is definitely one of them. So thank you.
And Heather, can I just tell you, so when I met with the speech and language pathologist people, the whole group, and talked about the other day the entrance and exit criteria, I said to them, I promised the CPAC that I'm going to do this, so we have to get this done. So the other day when you came to visit for the meeting last week, I desperately wanted to tell you, but I told you I wasn't going to share until it was made public here.
No, you were very tight-lipped, yes. But glad to see it. Glad to see that on there, and yes, it definitely has to be an immediate goal. We've been asking for it for years. So thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, we've got Caitlin McLeod.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, if you could state your name and address, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Caitlin McLeod, 17 Lynn Scott Road. I just kind of wanted to piggyback a little bit on top of what Amy was just saying along the lines of trust. And to further what Dr. Cataldo is saying, improving the communication with parents and making sure that parents are heavily involved and are being heard. And I think a big piece of that puzzle that no one really has touched upon is the communication with parents if their child's IEP, legal IEP, is not being upheld at the school level. I know myself personally, I went months of my daughter's IEP not being upheld in one of her classes. I had absolutely no idea that this was going on because no one made me aware of it. And parents should not have to be relying on their young students to come home and tell them, hey, I'm not getting the extra help I'm supposed to be getting in math class. And I personally, my child who is on an IEP is at the middle school level. So she's older and, we're able to have conversations about it. But we have much younger students within our district on IEPs that would have no idea whether or not their accommodations are being met at school. I'm not even sure who that communication, should be, who that should be coming from. But I know, personally speaking for myself, it felt like the rug was ripped out from underneath me when I learned the information that my daughter had gone months without her legal IEP services being upheld at the school level, and it was extremely disappointing. I had many conversations about it with other people, and I was apologized to for not being communicated that information, but that's not okay. Full transparency with parents of exactly what is going on with their children while they're at school needs to happen, first and foremost. And if IEP accommodations are not being upheld, we are the first people that should be told to. And on top of that, being shared with a plan for compensatory services for what will then happen due to the lack of those services. Because I can only imagine how many students are just kind of flying under the radar right now that are supposed to be getting services that they're not, and their parents have no idea. And that's just really not okay.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I know that this was, this was not created overnight, and it's going to take some time, but you can hear the passion in the parents that the kids have got 13 short years in the district, and, we're going to work as hard as we can to get things on the right path. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for tonight. Yeah. I just have to tell Mr. Hawes that I am a gummy person, so Swedish fish is my thing.
Chocolate here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So we're going to move over to item 8.2 to approve the Student Opportunity Act plan and act as appropriate. Is this you? Sorry.
Before I pass it off to Katie, who's going to give us a short overview of this plan. One of the reasons it's so short is you'll see that this plan sort of connects to the themes that you've heard over and over again from us around a real focus on MTSS, a focus on social, emotional, and mental health, behavioral health needs of students, which you've heard are areas of need. And then third, connected to the presentation you just heard, is the implementation of best practices with students with disabilities. So that while this is a new plan that's required to meet a state requirement, it's not new. It's sort of emphasizing the work that we already have identified in other areas and work that's ongoing, so that this plan is just a reiteration of the work and a strengthening of the work that we've already been highlighting. So while it's another plan, it really is connected. You'll see the dots connecting and the theme kind of emerging. So a shorter presentation for sure, but connected to all of the work that we've been highlighting and sharing with you that is ongoing in the district. So I'll pass it off to Katie.
Absolutely. So this is very much a continuation of a conversation. And I do think the school committee has now heard several compelling MTSS presentations that could probably give this presentation for me this evening. And so first just wanted to remind everyone what the Student Opportunity Act is. So this was an act that was passed in 2019 to ensure that every student in the Commonwealth has access to high quality public education. So the Student Opportunity Act was first and foremost about funding, appropriately funding schools, but there were also some additional policies in there to provide additional accountability to schools. And so that's really what the Student Opportunity Act is it's a measure of accountability. And so given that the act was passed in 2019, districts were first required to submit a Student Opportunity Act plan in March of 2020. Interesting timing. It happened just before another world event. And so just wanted to stress, as Dr. Adams said, the SOA plan is not a comprehensive strategic plan. It outlines a subset of initiatives to address disparities in learning experiences and outcomes for student subgroups, and is intended to focus on high leverage practices. And so this plan will identify a few of the evidence-based programs and strategies that we've identified that will specifically support subgroups, including English language learners, students with disabilities, and low-income and other high-need students. Unfortunately, a beautifully written SOA plan does not mean more money for us through the Chapter 70 funding, but it is a requirement of the state that we provide some accountability. And many of you here on the committee have been involved in various stages of the development of the plan. So first we did a data dive, and again, this school committee has had several data presentations from our team this year. DESE has come up with some new tools that provide some comparisons to benchmark districts. It has provided some data around our district performance summary. You've seen MCAS data, MTSS data, YRBS data, and attendance data. All of that helped inform the plan. In terms of the input that we sought, so the SOA plan window from DESE was about 6 weeks. So again, it was an abbreviated process, but we began with the Education Programming Subcommittee of the school committee early in February. Also discussed this with the Special Ed Subcommittee. Our leaders all had a chance to provide input through organizations such as our Administrative Council. We sought parent input through the townwide PTO. Our educators had a chance to provide input through a survey, and tonight will be kind of the final round of input and hopefully a vote on this plan. And so it will come as no surprise to you after Dr. Cataldo's very articulate presentation this evening and all of the work that we've done around our strategic plan, that our focus areas will center around MTSS, both MTSS academic and our social emotional MTSS. I will say that in every group, the single most urgent priority for all groups, staff, families, and administrators, it really was the social, emotional, and behavioral health that was bubbling to the surface as the most urgent priority. And so one of the evidence-based practices that we identified is to expand our capacity to address social emotional learning. And so this will look like additional professional development and additional programming around SEL. Again, no surprise that we'll be continuing our emphasis around MTSS academic areas, continuing to build the structures, the schedules, and the supports for our students. I will say that focus area 2.2 dovetails most nicely with Dr. Cataldo's presentation this evening around high leverage practices specifically for students with disabilities. Dr. Cataldo mentioned some of the additional professional development that we plan to do around inclusive practices, around evidence-based literacy approaches, multisensory literacy, and so on. And so, again, this is really dovetails nicely with much of what Dr. Cataldo said this evening. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the more extensive plan, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? No? Does anybody online or in the audience have questions or comments? Okay. I think we're good.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Katie, very much for that. I will make a motion to approve the Student Opportunity Act plan for school years 2024 through 2027.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8.3, to discuss a proposal for additional fees, i.e. technology, middle school transition summer camp and transportation and act as appropriate. I'm not sure if Aisha's going to kick us off. Okay, thank you.
In terms of this, from our last meeting, one of the discussion points that we had was, have you put the question to us in terms of, have we looked at additional fees?
Do you want to start with the summer school first, the middle school?
Sure.
Derek is
Yes,
here, and
okay,
maybe
sorry, Derek.
has a
I'm
wake
here all
up
night.
has a wake up call of at least 7.
Yes, okay.
If not earlier.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I guess just it's kind of exciting to actually do this because, particularly leading in from Dr. Cataldo's presentation and talking about transitions, one of the ideas that has come up is in terms of having a transition summer camp for parents of kids who are leaving elementary and moving up to the middle school. Maybe you want to come up as well, Derek, and then maybe you can chime in as I speak as well. This transition camp would, in terms of what Mr. Smith has been looking at, would be like a 2-week camp, right?
That's our plan.
Chime in from there.
Sure. So right now we're in the planning stages of a new initiative at the middle school where we would seek to provide students with an 8-day transition camp, if you will, straddling the end of July, beginning of August. We would look to give students the opportunity to come into the middle school, familiarize themselves with the physical space, but also learn about some of the procedures that are in place. But most importantly, just get comfortable with our school, get to know some of our teachers, go over some readiness activities, organizational skills, things of that nature. It would be, short in span, but I think it would provide a great level of comfort for a segment of the population who would need that type of preparation before they make that jump from elementary to middle school. So that's the wide angle lens view of what we hope to do. If we are able to move forward with this, I'd be able to provide you with more details, because as we identify faculty who would be interested in participating in this program, we'd hope that they would bring their individual talents and interests into that, so that it's not purely come to the middle school, practice opening your locker, here's where the cafeteria is, but really things to make them feel more connected to our school. It would provide them with an opportunity to become connected with an adult who works in our school. That makes it would increase that level of comfort as they make that transition. So that's the general view of what we hope to do. And obviously it's going to grow from this beginning stage as we bring in people who have their own individual skills and talents.
So I think Mr. Smith forgot to say the word fun. So
Did I?
That it was really important. So really, as you know, the middle school highlights that there's some great elective opportunities. So depending on the staff willing to work in the program, would be an opportunity for kids to sort of get a small taste of an elective, or to feel what was sort of fun at the middle school, be able to use the facilities in the gym, the fitness center, perhaps have an art class, use the family and consumer science space, the tech ed spaces. And so really there'll be a little bit of sort of some support around transitioning, organization, and then something that was really fun, F-U-N.
See, I think it's all fun, Dr. Adams. Every minute of middle school.
So that the kids could get excited too about the transition to the middle school. So, and the idea was that the timing was, I think we discussed 8 to 12.
Yes.
Yeah, 8 to 12, just in the morning, short. They'd, probably gather together in the auditorium for sort of a beginning of the day meeting, and then they would transition to sort of maybe have 3 kind of periods. One might be sort of a more academic focus, one sort of a fun transition.
Right.
And so they'd have these transitions, they'd be practicing throughout the day, where they were sort of moving throughout the school and using the space to get acclimated, so that it didn't seem like a big, scary space for students. So
You said that much better than me, Dr. Adams.
fun was important in our discussions.
Clarification, is this going to be open to all rising 6th graders, or will it be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the more the merrier.
Yep. You might want just call it Teen Extreme, and it's another week of Teen Extreme.
Well, we're looking to have a student to staff ratio of about 10 students to every staff member, but we also would love to incorporate some student volunteers in this. So again, we're looking at building connections and relationships between our current middle school students and our incoming kids. Not a true mentoring program, but certainly an opportunity where kids might see a familiar face in the halls when they first get there and not feel like those 8th graders are so intimidating, because they really are great kids. We're very lucky to have such a wonderful student population. We want our newest students to feel that warmth and love that exists in our school.
I can think of some outgoing 8th graders could be some with us for
Community service.
Someone close to home?
There you go. Multitasking.
It's a great idea. Will there be financial aid available if there's a student
Absolutely.
who would benefit from it?
Yes.
Yep, we'd use the same sort of process that we have in place for other programming to provide any need that any student might need. And our intent, if approved tonight, would be to post to see if we can find staff willing to work the program, and then begin recruitment immediately, because we know families have summer plans. We don't, we may expect that the program may be smaller this year, and sort of to help us get started, pilot it, and then hopefully this can become an annual tradition. I think it goes to hopefully some of the goals that we heard about how do we transition students between elementary. While this is a gen ed kind of offering, I think it speaks to that idea of making sure that we provide transition points between our elementary and our middle school, and our middle school and our high school. So,
And the fee is, which we're going to talk about, but that's
Yes,
simply
the fee, yes.
that's simply to cover the cost. This is not.
it's
This is sort of a little
simple,
different
so,
than the next
yeah.
conversation.
I mean, I would love to have it. It's our first year, right? It's our first year, right? It's our first year, so
Spoken
it's
like a
only
true business director.
It's really just to cover costs in our first year. As this, I would love to see that as this grows, that it could also be, contribute to other things as well, right? But for now, just to cover costs.
And how do you anticipate collecting the fees? Would we have to set up another revolving fund?
I think we can do it through KIA, right? And so we could do that.
Okay.
Also, we would use the UniPay system and just have people pay online.
Yep.
So I think in terms of those processes that we already have in place, we can just use those processes to be able to execute this.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. Does anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? Raise your hand. Nope. Okay. All right.
I think we need a motion to.
Yeah. Is everybody comfortable moving forward? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I will make a motion to approve the establishment of a Hingham Middle School summer preparation camp with a fee of $350 for the summer of 2024, with financial aid assistance available for those who need it.
I have a second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that.
Good luck.
That's
Yes.
a creative idea. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to take all the credit, but there were more minds than mine involved.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Yes,
you.
keep us posted. Thank you.
Okay.
So now the other two items were to discuss two fees, which we ended last meeting with the intent of coming back to you with some information. One is the transportation fee, and then the second is information on the possibility of instituting a technology fee as well, sort of in response to our last
Yeah.
conversations. And I'll pass it off to Aisha. Which one do you want to start with?
The Chromebook technology one.
Okay.
For that one, I know that there was a lot of conversation about the technology fee. So we went back and we did some research in terms of some of the requirements around that. What are some districts in the area doing, as well as how much are people collecting, etc. Basically, what we found was most people actually just have a technology fee that covers insurance or any replacements for damaged items. And in terms of that, the insurance part of it, I know that's something that is already in place at the middle school and is encouraged that families sign up for the annual insurance, which covers the Chromebook. And I guess my only suggestion here or recommendation here would be that in the case of any damaged devices, that we would probably consider a replacement fee, but I would not at this time recommend actually having any separate technology fee for the Chromebooks at this time.
Thank you. Any questions or feedback? Matt, you look like you have something.
So there's no change, basically the recommendation is no change to what we do today.
The only change I would say is that we only have an insurance fee for people who want to sign up for insurance, they can. But there may be cases where people don't sign up for insurance and they may damage a Chromebook.
I think that's what I was looking at. So that happened to my son, and we didn't have insurance, and we were
Right.
charged money, and we paid for it.
Right. So
But what's the difference? I guess that's what I'm trying to
I
understand.
don't think we have an established fee for that damage. In terms of
How much did you pay? What did you feel it was worth?
No, I mean, it wasn't the full replacement. I mean, they
Right.
just said it cost this much, and I paid
Yeah.
it. But
So I think in terms of full replacement, if somebody like damaged the screen and it's no longer usable, and they don't have insurance coverage, just to have a fee in place. I think this will have something that's approved. The full charge cost of a Chromebook is about $245. So we have a little bit of a discount there in terms of, wear and tear,
So this is if they don't have insurance.
if they don't have insurance.
And you have to fully replace it.
Yeah.
You got
I always comment, there's a lot of districts that have fees.
So these fees are really, as you would see, they really are just insurance and replacement costs. So they're not actual
Oh, sure.
technology.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you know the percentage of families that actually do buy the insurance?
I can come back with that information, but I don't have it
that's
off the
okay.
bat. Yeah.
Curious if most families do or there's a lot who don't.
I would assume that most. If you do a survey right here, to find out on average how many couples do insurance.
I had a placement for an experience. I don't remember how much it was.
but effectively though, so do we have to vote on this, or I'm fine too? But like, this is not going to end up bringing in
No, it's not
more
right.
money.
It's just gonna cover costs.
Right. Not revenue generating.
I think what we're finding in the discussion, we thought it might be a
Yes.
revenue generator.
Right.
In the end, it's not generating any
Yeah.
revenue. You can see that its use across other districts is just to replace them so that the student can have a Chromebook. So the intent we might have had that it could generate revenue,
Yeah.
this is not a place where it can.
Preventing us from losing revenue. From losing money.
Yes, because you wouldn't have to buy, if you had 300 kids in a class, you'd have to buy 300, but if somebody breaks one and doesn't pay to replace it, now you have to buy 301. So you're at least not.
Yeah.
buying
Although I
extra.
imagine most people pay. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just the sucker that was told I had to pay. But yeah. My guess is most people pay.
I guess so too. So can't hurt to formalize it?
Formalize it, yeah.
As a fee?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make a motion to implement a replacement cost of $200 for any Chromebook that is lost or damaged during the school year and not covered by insurance to cover the cost of replacement and or repair of the device.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank
And the
you.
interesting one, which
And
we
then-
talk about frequently.
Yes, so this one is, basically the law is that for K to 6 students who live more than 2 miles away from the school, that we are required to provide transportation for those kids. And it's all kids, including private school kids as well, where we have to provide that transportation. In looking at this is actually very interesting for me as well. in terms of looking at, when we look at the ridership of our different schools, and we look at the proportion of the kids who are actually within 1 to 2 miles, there's some districts that are more or less more of a walking district than a bus taking district. So the question becomes, if we look at it, as we look at implementing of the possibility of implementing a fee, there are really 3 options the way I see it. The first one being that we could potentially charge no fee, right? And we push this aside for another year or 2, right? The second one being that we implement a fee for kids in grades 7 to 12. And the third option being that we implement a fee from K to 12 for anyone who is less than 2 miles. Less than 2 miles for K to 6, and everyone from 7 to 12. In terms of looking at the costs, the revenue generating, we look at that in terms of the K to 6 for the less than 2 miles, and we could generate up to $200,000 for K to 6, and 7 to 12 at least $246,000, a total of $456,000 in terms of revenue. And the costs that we saw, some of them were things that we could put a dollar value to, and some things that we really couldn't put a dollar value to in terms of increased traffic that we would expect, increased pollution from all the driving and everything else, that in terms of more people being on the road, and in terms of the burden that we place on families as well, in terms of adding an additional fee, right? So in terms of this, our recommendation at this time is to maybe push this off for another year or 2, right? And at this time, probably, maybe not implement this at this time. But we welcome your comments, questions, or feedback.
I mean, it's great to have the data, and
Right.
you've included some of the towns that do charge, which I saw during the Sustainable Budget Task Force. So I was actually surprised at how many districts around us that do charge. So thank you for putting that in. Allie?
I was just going to ask, and obviously you don't know until you get there, but even with the proposed, if you did 7 through 12 and K through 6 under 2 miles, we have to assume that a lot of those people won't take advantage and it will cause more traffic. So you could go through all this effort, plan for extra buses, and then find that families aren't signing up for it. So I do worry from that perspective. So I agree, maybe it's worth holding and maybe asking at some point if we're looking for data from parents about who actually would be interested, to see how many people would take up that opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll also add on, if we come to this down the line, that I would personally be uncomfortable with, especially for kindergarten, where we're already charging a fee for kindergarten, and then to have a bus fee on top of that. I think that would be a lot, at least at the, I mean, it's a lot for everybody, but to have the 2 for kindergarten, I think that would be tough.
But may provide, not because of kindergarten, is it still true that the parent has to pick up if they're not on the bus, the parent has to actually pick up the student from the class?
Exactly.
So this could be an opportunity for the parents who work or don't have the capacity to get to the school to have that opportunity where they can just get on the bus, whereas that opportunity is not available to them right now. So anybody who that were required,
Kindergartners could take the bus.
They can take the bus.
they can, but so that anybody who's not within that distance, they are walkers.
Oh, okay.
So the parents of the walkers have to go to the school to pick up their child. So for those people, that would be the opportunity. Yeah, so kindergartners would be free for anybody that's over the mile and a half to 2 miles. But anybody who is a walker and the parent wants the option to get them on the bus, they could have that option.
Yeah, they could have that option.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we thought about as well, particularly, for example, in the Foster district, where during construction there had been a question about whether we could provide buses for those kids who were walkers during construction, And it just wasn't possible because of the number of bus drivers that we had available at the time, and it wasn't feasible. But I could definitely see, particularly during construction, some of those walkers would have loved to take the bus, because we had some requests for that as well.
Right? Anybody else?
Yeah, I am, well, and so last year I was like, oh, this is a lot of money, this would be great. And the more I think about this, I mean, especially the whole implementation of it and the tracking and, you know, okay, this kid can't get on the bus. I just think it's going to introduce, I definitely don't think we should do it this year. And I'd say I'm pretty hesitant even in the future. I think high school would fall off the map. Like, you know, I know we're assuming not as many would take it, 430 or whatever, but I mean, it's already pretty, like, not that many kids take it anyways. I think once you start charging a fee, it's like,
I know, that's right.
the freshmen just get driven.
I could see like the 9th and maybe 10th graders would be the ones, you know, would be the high users. And we do have a few 9th and 10th graders who live within the 2-mile radius, who may be willing to pay to get on the bus so that they have a service available to them. But I think, as may be the case, once the kids get to like 11th grade, they're either driving themselves. I don't think they can drive their friends by then, but most people are not taking the bus.
Bradley Park High School bus is like a ghost town. And the elementary and middle school is like completely.
How many times
Very
do you guys
different,
take the bus?
exactly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more socializing and more surveys that would need to be done for this, because I think the same thing, like thinking back to when my kids were at the middle school. I drove them a lot because it is such an early start, and if there was a fee, I probably would have, I'll just drive them every day, and then that's just more cars on the road, to your point. Yeah. For the
So
10
how does
times
everybody
every
feel
drive.
about surveying the parents over the next year to kind of get more data?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
I think it'd be good to review it, the idea every year. While we're
Yeah, it's real money, so I mean, I think it's worth,
Yeah.
like, we could be wrong. Maybe everyone's like, you know, totally worth it and will help.
I know my thought looking at it is that's to teachers with your recall, you know, so it's, you know, but no, I agree, it's not ready yet. And, would it be worth bringing this to the traffic committee too?
Sure.
Yeah. Get some more data on what that impacted.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider, because as I think we have subsequent years where we'll have the same kind of budget constraints of the memorandum of agreement and increased costs, this may be an area we need to consider, whether we need to consider a K through 12 solution or we need to start smaller to begin with and increase over several years. It's an option that we may need to consider in subsequent years for future budgets.
Okay, thank you for pulling that together.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to 8.4, to approve donation from Hingham Sports Partnership for Wellness Center and act as appropriate. I think this is you as well.
Thank you. So we received a check for $180,000 from Hingham Sports Partnership. Thank you, Hingham Sports Partnership. Right now, in terms of the dock, we now have an OPM and a designer for the dock. So Hingham Sports Partnership initially contributed $100,000 to us towards the dock, and this is an additional $180,000 to cover the costs of the designer and the OPM. So at this time, we're just asking you to help us accept that gift, and so we can move the project along, please.
Okay. I will make a motion to accept the gift from the Hingham Sports Partnership in the amount of $180,000 to be used towards the cost and design of the project known as the dock at Hingham High School.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, 8.5, to approve grants and donations and act as appropriate. It's nothing.
Right, we have one
one
grant
okay,
from the Arts Alliance.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And in terms of this grant, it's a grant for $2,000 for both East and Foster. There are display boards, which the students' arts will be displayed in at different times throughout the school. So it's something, I think there's actually an event happening in April that everybody's very excited about happening. So just wanted to accept this gift and get your approval on that, please.
I will make a motion to approve the grant in the amount of $2,000 from the Hingham Arts Alliance for art display boards at Foster and East schools.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, 8.6, to approve surplus and act as appropriate. So I believe we have two here.
Yes, please. So over the next couple of weeks, we probably will have a lot more surplus items coming from Foster as we begin to clear out our old building. But for today, we only have books from the Library of South, and a Maytag washing machine that no longer is in service.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to declare. I'll make a motion to declare as surplus library books from the South Library listed on the packet inside our packets, and to authorize the library coordinator to dispose of them at the least cost to the town of Hingham.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And I'll make a motion to declare as surplus a Maytag washing machine model MVWX655DW1. Ooh, there's more. Series C703424489, and to authorize the Director of Business and Support Services to dispose at the least cost to the town of Hingham.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you very much. All right, item 9, subcommittee and project reports. Matt.
Yeah, real quick, just for our special education subcommittee, we have interviews coming up on Wednesday and Thursday for legal counsel for student services. So we're interviewing 4 firms, and we are in the process of scheduling our next subcommittee meeting, hopefully ideally before April vacation. That's all.
Thanks.
And those sessions this week are an executive session.
Yes, executive session.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Hingham Arts Party was Saturday night, so thank you to everyone who came out in the monsoon. It was a swimming success, no pun intended. But it was a great party, and I think they were very happy with the turnout. Considering we have a policy meeting on Wednesday, and the PR school council is meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Carrie?
Salary negotiations is meeting with the teachers tomorrow. We have mediation session with Unit B, the paras, on Wednesday, and we are meeting with Unit D, the administrative assistants, on Thursday. And the middle school council met on Monday, the 18th.
Thank you. Jen?
Finance and facilities, we met today. We went over the 24 capital requests that were made last year and what has been fulfilled, similar to what we saw on our tour in the winter. And South School Council is meeting on Wednesday night.
Thank you.
I'm good. Okay.
And I don't have anything either. All right, item 10, anything under 48 hours? All right. Number 11, we have a long motion, so we're entering into executive session and we will not be returning to open session.
All right, so I will move to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, for the following purposes. I'll make it a little briefer. To approve minutes of the February 28th, March 4th, and March 13th, 2024 meetings of the Salary and Negotiations Subcommittee with participation of the full school committee. Executive sessions as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare.
To approve minutes from the executive session held on March 12th, 2024 as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare.
And to provide an update on negotiations with HEA units A, B, and D as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
I so declare. Take a second.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, Matt.
Aye.
Allie.
Aye.
Carrie.
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.